lovely people, welcome back to another Story Study Saturday. I'm Sammi and I'm a writer who likes to learn about writing through reading and share what I learn with you. This week I want to talk about Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine. And if you go on to enjoy this video, it'll really help me out if you actually hit that like button down below. It'll show YouTube that more people may like this video and learn something from it as well. Let's talk about Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, because I did not know Reese Witherspoon was coming at me with her book club recommendations, because this was so far out of the realm of what I expected and I got so much out of it. This is a 5-star book by every category that I could give it, and I just was so blown away by the storytelling and the character development, and there's just a lot of really amazing things going on in this story. I literally stayed up last night to finish reading it, and I am so tired today because of that, but I am here to tell you what this book is like and why you should also read it and what you can learn from it as a writer. So to start with my thoughts, in like the beginning, the first maybe 2 or 3 chapters, I was like, wow, this is really hard to get through. Because Eleanor has a really unique way of navigating the world. She's got a lot of very unique things about her. She is special beyond belief. She is one of a kind, and she's aware that she is different from everybody else, but she's under the impression that she's not the weird one. And once you get the hang of how her narration style is, and you realize for sure that she's not a reliable narrator in terms of social interactions and like things to expect in normal average person situations, how other people react to her is usually more similar to how you would react to her. So once you get the hang of her narration style, her perception of the world, and really get to see that as she goes through her situations, you have to add in your own perceptions of the world to her perception of the world to really understand what's going on. Because she'll miss stuff and she just won't recognize it, and will be able to use our knowledge to recognize with it. So like, she gets a balloon that's a SpongeBob balloon, and she thinks it's the most amazing thing ever that there is a bath sponge with human features on it that's just in balloon form. What? And she's so convinced that she's not the weird one because she doesn't understand why a sponge would have facial features. This is easily the most emotionally intelligent book that I have read in a very long time, if not ever. Coming in close second behind my AP Psych textbook. And even then, maybe beating it out because I didn't have very much empathy for the terminology in a AP Psych textbook. But there is a lot of just great emotional depth that comes out of this story. There are so many unique perspectives that interact with trauma and processing past histories and using past traumas, past emotional abuse to drastically change who you are, and holding on to those things even though you don't know that you're holding on to them or how to let go. So it's a very, very unique set of circumstances that Eleanor Oliphant is in. She's one of a kind in all ways. She's all by herself. She is one independent human. It covers so many different ranges of emotional patterns. You get to see how emotional abuse on a child impacts them growing up. In her circumstance, you get to see how that changes her entire ability to interact with society, her emotional abuse from her mother. You get to see like a manifestation of depression. You get to see her concentrating on like how she feels sad and lonely and how she doesn't have anybody to process these things with because she didn't ever allow anyone to come into her mind. But she's welcoming us, the readers, into her inner monologue in this. And we get to come along for the ride. And it's beautiful. And a lot of that is just the beginning of the story. Like that's not even halfway through at that point of all of these amazing talented writing techniques and creative just talent that has been poured into this book, into this character, into creating the most real person I feel like I have ever read. So even as the story goes on, we get more and we get to see growth and amazing character development, and it's really beautiful to watch a character learn about love, how to love and how to be loved, and how love interacts in the simplest ways in a day-to-day situation. And it's just fantastic. And it's heartwarming and beautiful, and I want more people to read this book. I think Reese Witherspoon is doing a great job getting people to take a gander at it, because I did pick it up at a half-price bookstore and saw that it was in Reese Witherspoon's group. And I was like, I'm going to have to look into that. And I'm so glad that I read it, because I wouldn't have been able to be in the mental space that I'm in right now if I had not read it. It's a very impactful book. And it's something that a lot of people, I think, can relate to if they've had any form of loneliness, any form of emotional abuse, any form of feeling like they don't have any friends or anything like that. It's got a lot of just helpful situations that Eleanor is going through on her own that are very much bigger than your average. Like, I feel lonely. I don't think I have friends. People don't like me. I get bullied in this situation. Hers are much, much different. But even if your self-perception of a situation is so drastically different than the truth, the way that Eleanor's is, you can get something out of this book, because if you see yourself at all in Eleanor, her growth means that you can also have the same growth. And it's really, really beautiful to see her change from the perspective that she has at the beginning, which is she's not the weird one, everyone else is less than her, everyone else is more embarrassing, not as proper, etc., to being able to recognize that people are nice in the world. I will say I wasn't necessarily satisfied with the ending of the book. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's actually probably completely perfect. I was just hoping for something to happen that didn't happen. And there was a cliche that was brought in that I'm not a fan of, but it makes sense for the story. It makes sense for the story to have ended the way that it did. And I guess I'm okay with that, but I wanted a different ending than what happened. That's on me more than it is on the story, because the ending that the story gave was perfect for what the story needed it to be. I just wanted it to be different. And I'm cool with being wrong. Like, I am definitely wrong in this case. I did not make the right recommendation here. So what can we as writers learn from this story? I think that there is so much that is great to learn from this story. And it's definitely going to take me another read through to find all of the rest of them. But the ones that shine out the brightest is internal conflict. This is an amazing example of internal conflict and developing an internal conflict and giving your characters enough agency to handle their internal conflict, or the right amount of agency to handle their internal conflict. Because I would say that Eleanor barely has enough agency to handle her internal conflict, and that is perfect for this story. If she had any more, it would be a very different story, and using that agency with her internal conflict and seeing how she can handle her situation and manifest it in the best way possible for her particular story. This is also a really great example of an unreliable narrator, and seeing how you can create a story that is able to be followed by the reader when the narrator doesn't quite understand the world properly. Another great example of if you wanted to have an unreliable narrator, I know, is The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde. But this one is great because it's telling Eleanor's story from Eleanor's perspective, where The Brief and Wonderful Life of Oscar Wilde is telling Oscar Wilde's story from a friend's perspective, which makes it a little bit you know? This one also has a great example of an unlikely hero, the kind of thing where you expect something to happen, Eleanor expects something to happen, and then something very different from her line of perspective comes in and saves the day. And this is an amazing example of having that unlikely hero come in and swoop the story away and sort of highlight the strength that Eleanor has herself rather than have the prince come and save the day, you know? And of course, this is a great example of emotional conflict and emotional support, because you have all of these different areas where Eleanor has this emotional conflict and she needs emotional support as the story goes on, and how that changes as she receives emotional support or doesn't receive emotional support, and where that ebb and flow of a natural human emotional pattern comes from. And it's so educational because Eleanor doesn't know. She doesn't know. While Eleanor is brilliant, she's a loss for understanding in terms of emotional intelligence. This is a great circumstance to learn about emotional intelligence and emotional support and how that can affect characters, how that can affect people in your real life. It's a fun way of learning about emotional trauma, in my opinion. It's a little bit more fun than reading a psychology textbook for sure. I definitely think more people should read this book. I feel changed by it. I feel like it was worth the effort that I had to put in to read it, because Eleanor's a tricky character to get the hang of, and sticking with her is worth it through the whole story. And that's all I've got today for Eleanor Oliphant. Is completely fine. She is a special one for sure. So if you've read it, let me know in the comments down below. Let's have a talk about it. And I will happily see you again on Tuesday for a Writing Tip Tuesday, and again on Saturday. If you don't want to miss any of my uploads, please hit that subscribe button and the little notification bell next to it. I will be here on Tuesday and I will see you then.